The story kicks off in a gloomy spot with a pink-haired girl tied to a chair. She thinks it was all just a game, but now, completely drained of strength, she calls out Woo Hyan's name. Crying, the girl apologizes, having believed she'd be able to log out of that realistic game soon enough. At that moment, a hand reaches out toward her, and a desperate scream calls for Sue-ai. In another chair, we see the protagonist, Woo Hyan, who is also trapped and badly injured. He remembers his friend who, before passing on, asked him to survive at all costs. Woo Hyan then looks around and realizes there are several other people in the exact same situation. As time passed, he had no choice but to accept his tragic fate. The young man now begs in his thoughts for his friends not to abandon him there. With tears in his eyes, the protagonist begins to understand the harsh truth about that place. He accepts that this nightmare has become his new and terrible reality forever. The scene changes to show us a famous virtual reality game called Reverse Planet. This was the #1 game in the world, featuring dimensional portals and invasion wars. The protagonist joined this game on the recommendation of a very close female friend, but he ended up completely trapped in a world where the game turned into reality. Back in the present, a scientist congratulates test subject number 62. He says the prisoner is closer to becoming a transcendent being in their project. This transcendence project was an experiment that sacrificed thousands for one perfect being. To achieve this, they kidnapped people and used inhumane methods like body modifications. Basically, they were terrible biological experiments to achieve their goals. The scientist then orders them to get rid of those who couldn't handle it and takes subject 62 away. Watching his friends being taken away, Woo Hyan swears to himself that he will never forgive them. Gritting his teeth, he thinks that if this has become his reality, he's going to do something about it. With a look full of hatred, he vows to survive and get his revenge at any cost. Suddenly, an alarm sounds throughout the facility, announcing that the subjects are escaping. We then see Woo Hyan and his friends running desperately down a long corridor. The protagonist says excitedly that if they get through that hallway, they'll finally be free. But as they get close to the exit, they are stopped by a muscular guard with red hair. The guard then mocks them, saying they made it far, but have no idea what awaits them. He continues the taunting, saying that hallway would actually be the grave for all of them. Woo Hyan and his companions prepare to face the enemy they call the Professor. One of his companions asks Woo Hyan to provide support while they take care of the enemy. The guard calls them fools and says he's going to end everyone at once without mercy. In an instant, the battle ends with the guard falling defeated to the ground with force. The enemy is in pain, while his special glasses shatter from the impact. Despite the victory, all of Woo Hyan's companions were also defeated and are lying on the ground. With tears in his eyes, the protagonist realizes that this terrible situation has happened again. His mind fills with despair as he relives these traumatic moments one more time. Suddenly, several dark and strange creatures appear around his fallen friends. These monsters with macabre smiles seem ready to attack and finish everyone off right there. After escaping, a lot of time passed, and to avenge those he loved, he fought without stopping. His journey of vengeance led him to face countless enemies along the way. He narrates that to avenge his friends, he took out everyone who crossed his path. We then see the protagonist, now stronger, taking down several guards with ease. Woo Hyan shows no mercy and finishes his opponents in a brutal and quick manner. But despite all his strength and victories, he seemed exhausted by it all. His revenge felt like an endless cycle because the shadowy creatures always returned. Desperate, he wonders how much longer he would have to live in that horrible way, until one day, a holographic screen appears in front of him with new information. The protagonist's eyes widen in complete surprise at what he was reading. The screen showed a mission to eliminate the project director in exchange for returning home. The scene shifts to a destroyed office, with several bodies on the floor and a man begging. The project director is on his knees asking why they are doing this to him. The man screams desperately, not understanding why they were attacking when they had everything. At that moment, one of Woo Hyan's companions grabs him by the collar with a lot of rage. Kim Young-jun, subject 81, mocks the director's question. The director then tells him to shut up, saying he wasn't talking to him. At this, Kim Young-jun turns around and calls for Mr. Baek Woo Haiyan, who was right behind him. The protagonist is revealed as Subject 62, the Superhuman back Wu Ian. The director stares at him and calls him the perfect success of the project, true transcendence. The desperate director says he is on another level and offers anything, but Wu Haiyan refuses the proposal. The man calls him a fool and screams. Asking if he thinks ending his life will solve everything, he reveals that the corporate alliance known as the League of Companies never lets their enemies live, and threatens that not only him, but his family and friends would also all be eliminated by the organization. In that instant, the protagonist advances with speed and finishes the director without any hesitation. We then see Kim Young-jun, who seems to have participated in taking out the project director. He complains to Wu Haiyan that they still had questions to ask. But the protagonist doesn't even care about that. A screen appears in front of him stating, "Mission complete," and the option to return to his original world. With eyes shining with hope, the protagonist thinks he can finally leave that hell. Just as he is about to press the button to leave, a mysterious voice calls out to him suddenly. The voice asks if he has forgotten them and all the others who are left behind. The souls of his companions surround him, begging him to continue his revenge for them. But Wu Haiyan says he is tired and wonders if he hasn't already done enough for all of them. Thinking this is his only chance, his friend Kim Young-jun grabs him tightly by the arm. The protagonist then says he is going back to his world, leaving his companion totally confused. With a smile, Wu Haiyan apologizes and presses the button to finally return to his home. Suddenly, the young man wakes up startled in a bed he hasn't seen in a long time. He sits up and looks around, realizing that this place is actually his old room. Wu Haiyan then grabs his phone to check exactly how much time has passed since he was taken. To his surprise, he sees that it is the same day he was pulled into that game. He wonders if time hasn't passed, and looking in the mirror, notices his scars are gone. But the memories and sensations he lived in that place are too vivid to be a dream. The young man clearly remembers all the battles he fought and all the suffering he went through. The images of his companions being defeated return to his mind with great force and clarity. He also recalls the cry for help from his female friend, who didn't want to go out like that, and mainly the threat from the director, who promised to end everyone he loved, one by one. That's why he is certain that the 10 years he spent there were real and not a nightmare. Suddenly, his phone starts ringing, and the name of someone called Jung Na Yin appears on the screen. The protagonist finds the name familiar, but can't remember who it is at the moment. Upon answering, the girl screams asking why he didn't call and if he forgot their plans. Wu Haiyan gets confused by the word plans, and the girl says they agreed to meet at night. Before he could answer, she hangs up the phone, leaving the young man even more confused. After thinking a little, he finally remembers that voice and who it belonged to. It was his closest classmate and the person who recommended the game for him to join. He wonders if she knew something and did it on purpose, but decides to meet her first. At the restaurant, the girl greets him, waving from afar with a smile on her face. She calls him by name and says it's been a long time since they saw each other like that. The girl asks if he wants to drink since it's the first time they've seen each other since the semester ended, but he refuses because, in his current state, he doesn't know what he might do if he got drunk. The girl finds it odd but accepts, and then the two start preparing the food at the table. His friend then asks if he has played Reverse Planet since he promised to do the tutorial. He replies that he created the character, watched the intro, and was pulled into the game. She complains that it's the same as not having played at all, and the protagonist gets annoyed with the comment. With anger, he clenches his fist, thinking he spent 10 years in that hell because of her. The girl says she was anxious because he promised to appear on her stream since he was a famous ranker. The protagonist then remembers she wanted to be a streamer, and that's why she insisted so much on them playing together. Despite the strange conversation, he thinks at least this makes Return feel a bit more real. Back in his room, the young man starts using the computer to research something important. He looks for the game developers and discovers the company headquarters is in Silicon Valley. But he gives up on the idea because he knows if he tells the truth about the game, he'll be treated like a nut job. Besides, if the developers are involved, Investigating would be very dangerous for him. Tired of everything, he wonders why he is doing this, since he managed to escape that hell. The protagonist then decides that enough is enough, and it's better forget that horrible place forever. Some time passes, and we see one of his friends approaching to talk to the protagonist. From that day on, the young man tried to lead a normal life and move on with his friends. He starts attending school again and spends time with his classmates like in the old days. During one of the classes, he looks at his studies and tries to remember what his subject was about. But even trying, he can't forget the past and wonders if he really returned home. Suddenly, the protagonist feels a strange presence and turns his head quickly to look around. However, there was nothing strange there besides other students in the silent library, but things started to go wrong, and the voices in his head demanded revenge against his enemies. He gets startled and his chair drags on the floor, making a noise that catches everyone's attention. His classmates look at him confused and wonder why he is acting so strangely. The protagonist then leaves the room and tries to calm down in the hallway, but the hallucinations chase him. The voices call him by name, and the shadowy hands of the creatures haunt him without stopping for a second. At that moment, one of his friends approaches worriedly and asks if he is okay, touching his arm. Reflexively, the protagonist pushes him away with great force, leaving the classmate scared. His mind tricks him, and for an instant, he sees a weapon in his hand, ready to attack whoever approaches. In his vision, he attacks his friend without mercy, as if he were one of his old enemies. The friend asks what he is doing, and the young man snaps back to reality, realizing his mistake. He apologizes, saying he got scared, and his friend comments that people think he's acting weird. The young man looks at his trembling and sweaty hands, realizing he is losing control of the situation. Later, he sits on a bench to rest and try to put his thoughts in order. But the shadowy creatures appear again at his feet, calling for him to return. They surround him and ask if he has already forgotten them and the revenge he promised to seek. Desperate, he begs them to stop when his friend Na Yin finds him and calls his name. She looks at his tired face and asks if something is wrong because he looks very beat down. The young man denies it with difficulty, saying it's nothing major, but his appearance says otherwise. The girl says if he needs anything just to talk to her, but he just ignores her without answering. He then finally understands that it was he himself who brought those specters to his world. He decides that if it will only end when he satisfies the specter's desires, then he will do it. He thinks that living this way here wouldn't be any different from the hell he lived in before. So the protagonist enters an immersion capsule, determined to return to that world. He decides he's going back to that place to finish what he started once and for all. A welcome message to Reverse Planet appears, and he emerges in an unknown room. He wonders where he is, and looking in the mirror, recognizes the laboratory waiting room. The young man questions why he didn't return to that world, and if there is some condition he needs to fulfill. A screen appears asking if he wants to finalize the character appearance, and he decides to play the tutorial. He adjusts some settings and disables combat assistance, since he was already used to fighting without it. Now he needs to choose his first main element to start building his skills. The game's skill system allows choosing a central element and strengthening the character with sub-elements. The elements are so varied that there are experts dedicated to researching the best combinations. Among all the options, he chooses the same one that made him a superhuman in the other world. A voice calls him Subject 48 and says they meet again after a week. The young man realizes the game doesn't show the terrible process before the awakening of abilities. He understands that no one would want to go through those horrible experiences, even in a game. The voice then tells him to enter a room for the next experiment to begin immediately. Upon opening the door, he faces a terrifying sight that leaves him paralyzed with fear. In front of him is a giant robot known as Returnee, a deadly combat machine. This robot was created to contain awakened subjects and was responsible for many losses. The first mission of the tutorial appears asking him to defeat the robot using his ability. He remembers one of his friends begging for help before being attacked by the machine. The memories of the robot attacking and finishing his companions return forcefully to his mind. The Returnee advances rapidly in his direction, ready to attack with its sharp claws. The protagonist prepares for combat, thinking that researchers only do disgusting things. With his eyes glowing in a golden hue, he prepares to face the giant robot. The Ednal attacks with a powerful blow, but the protagonist manages to dodge with agility. The robot continues its charge, but the young man moves with impressive speed. He dodges all the robot's attacks as if he already knew all its movements. The protagonist then jumps over the robot, preparing to counter attack with full force. He thinks the final version of the robot is more complicated because it uses special abilities, but with a single powerful blow, he destroys the initial version of the Etnal with ease. The robot's pieces fly everywhere, and the experiment is concluded successfully. The voice congratulates Subject 48, saying his skills are impressive. The tutorial is concluded, and the voice prepares to start the next experiment immediately. Suddenly, an intrusion alarm sounds throughout the lab, catching everyone by surprise. The researchers panic, shouting that it's a government invasion and running for cover. A female voice announces over the speakers to all victims trapped in the lab. She asks everyone to flee outside the facility with all their strength right that instant. The second mission of the tutorial appears, asking him to escape the facility. The protagonist thinks he needs to get out of there first, while the chaos and explosions continue. He runs down a corridor and wonders if the explosions have stopped so he can advance safely. The young man finds the corridor completely destroyed and comes across a wounded government soldier. He recognizes the mark of the Dimensional Management Department and realizes it's not an enemy. The soldier helps him open a room with various weapons and tells him to take whatever he wants to defend himself. The room is full of weapons of all types, from axes and swords to modern firearms. The soldier hands him a transmitter and says as soon as he gets out, he must send a signal for rescue. But before he could finish the sentence, the wounded soldier ends up succumbing to his injuries. The protagonist turns to the wall of weapons and remembers that this is just a game to progress. He then grabs a scythe from the wall, ready to continue his journey and escape that place. Suddenly, he is embraced by one of the shadowy creatures that have haunted him since the beginning. Elsewhere, we see a streamer named Kong So, y'all complaining about having to play Reverse Planet. Her viewers tease her in the chat, saying she has no choice because it was a promise. She says a promise is a promise and that a woman like her never breaks her word to her audience. Her fans continue to roast her, saying she has already lied several times about the games she would play. The streamer then announces she will start playing as punishment for failing a previous challenge. She saves the character appearance and chooses flames as her main ability for the game. The game explains that combat assistance helps in various areas like stance and skill usage. Her viewers demand she plays without any assistance on the hardest mode of the game. The streamer gets nervous and wonders if it's possible to complete the tutorial with zero help from the system. She researches and discovers that the percentage of players who play without assistance is basically zero. The streamer says she is confident in her skills, but knows it will be hard, like controlling a third hand. Suddenly, a mission appears offering a cash prize for completing the tutorial without assistance. With shining eyes, she changes her mind and says every streamer should try this at least once. Excited about the reward, she runs to start the mission, determined to win the challenge. But right on the first attempt, she is defeated by the robot in just 2 minutes of gameplay. She complains that the game is unfair for making players fight without any prior explanation. The streamer is defeated again, and her viewers comment that the mission wasn't made to be won. She then realizes she already got the necessary items and only needs to escape to complete the mission. The second mission starts, and the game begins an automatic search for a group of 4 people. The streamer wonders if completing the mission with a group still counts, and her fans tease her in the chat. The game fails to find a group, and she is surprised because the game is very popular and has many players. She tries an expanded search, and her viewers explain that the game only connects her with players without assistance. The streamer panics, thinking of canceling the mission, but the game finds a group successfully. She despairs because now she is stuck in an almost impossible mission with other unknown players. Upon entering the mission, she faces a shocking scene that leaves her speechless and completely scared. Her viewers are also shocked and wonder what is happening in that match. She notices the robots weren't destroyed with firearms, which makes the scene even more bizarre. With shining eyes, She realizes she found an amazing player and that the mission will be easy. Amid the debris, she spots the protagonist standing with his weapon in hand, surrounded by defeated enemies. The protagonist turns his face back with his eyes glowing in a mysterious purple hue. The streamer approaches carefully and asks if someone is there amidst the wreckage. Suddenly, the protagonist appears in front of her and points a knife in her direction with a cold look. In a quick movement, he attacks her but manages to stop the knife inches from her face. The streamer is completely terrified and frozen with the blade so close to her eyes. She hides behind a wall and begs him to spare her, thinking he is an enemy. The young man realizes his mistake and says he's leaving, but the streamer stops him and asks to go with him. She introduces herself as Kang So, Yoan asks if she can appear on his live stream. The girl guarantees that privacy mode is on, and his face won't be shown. Suddenly, the protagonist stops walking, and the streamer wonders if he got angry with her. Several guards appear and shout that it's a fugitive test subject, ordering to eliminate without capturing. The guards open fire, and the streamer protects herself from the shots, wondering why the tutorial is so hard. She worries about her new companion and asks if he is okay in the middle of the shootout. The protagonist dodges bullets with superhuman agility, using his chains to move. In an acrobatic move, he uses the chains to protect himself and advance against the guards. With a single swing of his scythe, he eliminates all enemies, leaving the streamer shocked. Her viewers are impressed and comment that what they just saw was crazy. They wonder how he manages to use the weapon like that without any assistance from the game. The protagonist continues to fight with incredible skill, combining attacks and defenses perfectly. The streamer watches and realizes the only element that changes eye color is the perfect being. She wonders if that isn't the trash skill that prevents the use of powers in the game. The perfect being is one of the many main elements of the game that strengthens physical attributes. However, it completely prevents the use of any special ability of the character. Because of this penalty, most players consider it one of the worst skills in the game. The streamer finds it strange someone would choose a build that prevents power usage in a game focused on it. Her viewers comment that for a match without assistance, strengthening the physical might be an advantage. But even so, she wonders how he manages to move like that being only level 1. The protagonist continues to fight with impressive ferocity, eliminating guards with ease. He uses his chains and scythe efficiently and brutally, giving his enemies no chance. He leaves a trail of destruction wherever he goes, showing his experience and skill in combat. The reflection in his scythe shows his eyes full of hatred and thirst for vengeance against his enemies. The shadowy creatures surround him again, saying his revenge isn't enough for them yet. Suddenly, a guard appears in a corner preparing to attack the protagonist by surprise. The guard aims carefully at the young man's head, ready to fire at any moment. The streamer notices the danger and screams for him to watch out for the hidden enemy. The protagonist pulls her close and uses his body as a shield to protect her from the shots. The bullets ricochet off his body as if he were made of steel, causing no damage. The guard is shocked by the scene, and the streamer uses the distraction to counter-attack. With a precise shot, she eliminates the guard, ending the threat and saving the protagonist. Relieved, she takes a deep breath, and her viewers praise her aim. The protagonist asks what she thought of his performance, and the streamer is speechless. With a smug smile, she says she still managed to help in the battle against the guards. The young man remembers his friends and the voices that called him brother in that terrible place. The memories of his companions haunt him, and he remembers the sacrifice of each one of them. The streamer calls him bus driver, a carry, and he stares at her with a serious and distant look. She apologizes and says she knows he did all the work, but he corrects her, saying she helped. The viewers praise the protagonist's kindness, even with the streamer taking advantage of the situation. The girl asks if she can continue with him in the tutorial, and he agrees without caring. She calls him bus driver again, but he corrects her and asks to call him Bake Woo, Ian. Curious, she asks if he really chose the perfect being skill as his main element. The streamer is impressed by his ability to dodge bullets without any special power. He says he doesn't play other games in particular and asks why she is so curious about it. The protagonist warns her that there are 2 eternal robots 20 meters ahead of them. The girl is shocked and wonders how he can sense enemies without any detection power. Turning the corridor, she confirms he was right and faces the two giant robots. The protagonist says he really liked fighting in the Colosseum and advances toward the enemies. He attacks the robots with overwhelming fury, using his scythe to destroy them quickly. With a single powerful blow, he destroys one of the robots, showing his strength and skill. He remembers how he dedicated himself to the game and how his skills took him to the top. The protagonist reveals that he even managed to get into the ranking of the best players. With a final punch, he destroys the last robot, showing his superiority in physical combat. The streamer and her viewers are impressed by the ease with which he defeated the enemies. One of the viewers explains that formerly, being a Colosseum ranker guaranteed a spot on a pro team. Hearing the name Battler, the streamer is shocked, and her eyes widen in surprise. She asks if they are talking about the most famous professional player in all of Reverse Planet. The protagonist tells them to keep moving, and the streamer follows him without questioning his orders. They arrive at the final mission of the tutorial, where a mysterious voice greets them on the staircase. The chief of the research lab appears and says they made it far only to meet their end. With an evil smile, he threatens them, saying that place will be the grave for both of them. The streamer realizes the chief is the last challenge of the tutorial and that the journey is almost over. Suddenly, the shadowy creatures appear around the chief, ready to attack at any moment. With macabre smiles, they prepare for the final battle against the protagonist and his companion. The chief advances with fury, shouting that they won't leave that place alive no matter what. The streamer prepares to provide support with her weapon, while the protagonist gets ready for combat. She shoots at the chief, but he creates a particle barrier that blocks all her shots. The streamer offers to cover him with suppression fire while he attacks the chief up close. The protagonist advances without fear, ready to face the chief and satisfy the specter's desires. With a powerful punch, he hits the chief squarely, breaking his barrier and throwing him far away. The impact of the blow creates an energy explosion that echoes through the dark corridor. The streamer is shocked and wonders if what just happened was some kind of bug in the game. The chief gets up furious and activates his steel body ability, ready for the final battle. With a war cry, he jumps toward the protagonist with crushing force. The impact of his attack sinks the floor, and viewers comment on the chief's power. The chief asks how long he will manage to dodge his attacks with such ease. The protagonist continues to dodge the chief's attacks with impressive agility and no effort. The intense battle destroys the scenery around them, but the young man isn't intimidated by the chief's strength. Viewers comment that even with assistance, it's hard to dodge the chief's attacks. The protagonist finally attacks and lands a powerful punch on the chief's face with full force. The chief is thrown back and kneels on the ground, feeling the pain of the received blow. The shadowy creatures surround him and tell him not to deactivate his steel form so easily. They demand the protagonist be even more brutal and make the chief suffer as they suffered. The chief wonders how a simple test subject can have so much power, and the protagonist stares at him with contempt. With a cold smile, he thanks the chief for making him so strong with his experiments. The streamer watches the scene shocked, not understanding what is happening between the two. A message announces the chief's defeat, and the streamer is impressed with the young man's victory. With the chief defeated, she says only leaving is left to complete the tutorial mission. The girl calls him to leave, and he follows her, leaving the chief's body behind. The protagonist is consumed by the shadowy creatures, but continues walking toward the exit. They finally reach the exit, and the streamer celebrates her freedom after the long battle. A message announces the completion of the mission, the level increase, and a skill point gained. He refuses her offer, saying he's going to stop playing for today, and says goodbye to the girl. The streamer thanks her viewers and ends the stream celebrating the victory in the tutorial. She asks him to wait and asks what suggestions she has for him at that moment. With a shy smile, she asks if he would like to be a regular participant in her stream. The streamer explains she wants to focus on the main story of the game, with some PvP battles now and then. She offers good payment and the freedom to choose his own schedules to participate. The protagonist refuses the offer, and the streamer realizes she won't be able to convince him to change his mind. She then asks to add him as a friend in the game, and he agrees without caring about it. The streamer thanks him for the help and logs off the game, leaving the protagonist alone in the scenery. Even after completing the tutorial, he wonders why he still can't return to that world. Back in real life, he researches the game and finds several threads about his performance. He had no idea of the impact his gameplay would have on the community and online discussions. Meanwhile, the streamer receives an anonymous donation with a question about his return to the real world. At the Korean branch of the game developer company, an unprecedented crisis was happening. Employees were in a panic because something never seen before was happening because of a single player. One of the employees watches the recording of the battle and still can't believe what he sees. Online communities are convinced it's a hack and demand an explanation from the company. The team chief asks if they are sure it's not a hack, and one of the employees responds. He guarantees they checked everything from character creation and found nothing wrong. There was no record of external modification, which made the situation even more mysterious. They have seen cheaters who walk through walls and use all kinds of dirty tricks in the game. Even players who turn invisible and steal items from others are common to them, but they have never seen movement like the protagonists, which defies game logic. A hack wouldn't be able to explain that level of control and skill in combat. Even so, they consider the small chance of it being a hack they haven't discovered yet. Anyway, they decide to do a full verification to be sure of what is happening. In a cafeteria, the protagonist talks with his friend Nai Yun about the repercussions of his gameplay. He asks if the internet community is really turned upside down because of him. The friend confirms it's chaos and that even a no-assist challenge has sprung up among players. Everyone is failing the challenge, and now the majority believes he used some kind of hack. She says she was shocked watching the video and asks how he knew it was her on the stream. The friend explains he said her name and that she has seen him fight before and knows his skills. He understands that was why she received that message, and the friend gets confused by the question. She gets worked up and asks if he was contacted by the company to verify if he is cheating. The protagonist confirms and explains they contacted him through the streamer to schedule a meeting. The friend gets excited and asks if he is going to accept the company's proposal to be verified. He thinks this is his only chance to contact the true creators and find out about the other world. He says he'll think about it, but he's already practically decided to accept the company's proposal. The friend advises him to clear his name if he intends to continue playing so as not to be called a cheater. She says his fighting style is unique and that no one can fight that way. She says even professional players are discovered by their habits and tics in matches. The friend is relieved he accepted because otherwise, the streamer would have received a lot of hate. He asks why, since they don't even know her, and the friend laughs at his innocence. She explains the blame would soon spread to the streamer who brought him into the match. The protagonist reflects on this, and the friend imagines herself in his cup with a mischievous smile. He sends a message to the streamer confirming he accepts the verification proposal. The streamer celebrates the news, excited about the opportunity to increase her audience. She believes that with so much attention, her viewer numbers will skyrocket in the next broadcasts. In her studio, she prepares everything for the stream and says everyone will be amazed by what they will see. 4 days later, the broadcast to clarify the hack controversy begins. The streamer greets the protagonist and says everything must have been very stressful for him. He reassures her, saying he doesn't care about the situation and isn't bothered by it. The young man asks if she suspects him, and she denies it, saying she saw his movements with her own eyes. She says the intensity in his eyes convinced her that he wasn't a cheater. The streamer prepares to start the broadcast, and the protagonist agrees to begin the verification. She greets her viewers and thanks them for waiting for the start of the live stream. With more than 10,000 viewers right from the start, she realizes how big the interest in the debate is. The protagonist introduces himself, and the chat fills with hate comments and accusations of cheating. The streamer asks everyone to calm down and maintain civility, so she doesn't have to close the chat. Before starting, she asks the protagonist what he thinks about this whole controversy. He says he finds it ridiculous to receive so much attention for something so small and unimportant. The streamer says it was an amazing play, and that they brought a special guest for the verification. A man appears, and the streamer greets him excitedly about his arrival for the event. He introduces himself as Park Jum-hyun, the leader of the company's operations team. The protagonist thinks that being a team leader, he must know a lot and that he needs to ask some things. The streamer and the protagonist introduce themselves to the team leader, who greets them formally. The team leader observes the protagonist and thinks he doesn't seem to have anything unusual at first glance. He invites them to the testing area, where the verification will be performed to clear up the controversy. The team leader explains they are in a private training room to practice skills. He says they will verify him by watching him fight several times and looking for external programs. The team leader asks if he agrees to the conditions, and the protagonist accepts without hesitating. With everything ready, he prepares to start the verification and prove his innocence to everyone. A training robot appears in the room, and viewers wonder about its strength and level. The team leader says they will start with an intermediate-level training robot. The shadowy creatures appear again and ask the protagonist to avenge them with his strength. The team leader explains the robot's movement patterns to the protagonist before the battle. Suddenly, he realizes the protagonist has disappeared and is shocked by the scene. The protagonist moved so fast, he seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving the team leader confused. The team leader doesn't understand what happened and wonders what he was talking about. He looks at his tablet and only repeats the protagonist's words. He repeats the protagonist's words without understanding what they mean in that context. Only the word eliminate echoes in his mind while he tries to process the situation. The protagonist destroys the robot with his bare hands, leaving everyone shocked by his strength. The system detects no external program intervention, confirming his innocence. The team leader realizes there is no way that could be a hack and is impressed with the young man. The protagonist steps on the robot's debris and says the test is over with an air of superiority. The team leader says they detected no external program, but that the test was short. He asks if the protagonist would mind fighting the way they suggest in the next test. The young man understands they are checking if he uses auto combat hacks and agrees. He explains that auto combat hacks fight for you, but can't imitate a real player. The team leader asks him to defeat 3 intermediate robots using only the chain scythe. He thinks this should be a huge disadvantage, but doesn't seem worried about the challenge. 3 training robots appear in the room, and the protagonist prepares for battle. He advances toward the robots without hesitating, ready to show his skills once again. The protagonist attacks the 3 robots simultaneously with impressive speed and precision. He uses his chains to move across the battlefield and attack the robots from all angles. With fluid and acrobatic movements, he dodges the robots' attacks and counter-attacks ferociously. He uses his chains to bind and destroy the robots with incredible and unique skill. In a few moments, he defeats all 3 robots, leaving a trail of destruction in the room. The streamer and the team leader are shocked and comment on the protagonist's surreal skill. The team leader says he has already collected enough data, but his curiosity speaks louder. He wonders if the protagonist can defeat an advanced robot with only 1 skill. With a greedy smile, he decides to do one last test to see the young man's limits. A new robot emerges from the ground, and its glowing red eyes stare at the protagonist. The robot has a female appearance, and viewers comment on the seriousness of the challenge. The team leader announces that the next test will be against an advanced training robot. The protagonist's eyes glow golden, and he prepares for the toughest battle yet. The robot stares at the protagonist with a challenging look, ready for the combat to come. With an evil smile, the robot prepares to attack with impressive speed and strength. The protagonist prepares for battle with a determined look, focused on his opponent. The robot advances and attacks with a powerful punch that the protagonist barely dodges. The young man is grazed and feels the force of the blow, throwing him back violently. He counterattacks with a punch, but the robot dodges easily, and the battle intensifies. The robot continues to attack with a series of quick and precise blows that destroy the surroundings. The protagonist realizes the advanced robot is on a completely different level from the previous one. He knows a single blow could be fatal, and that he needs to be extremely careful in battle. The young man tries to attack the robot with a punch, but his hand is stopped by the enemy's resistance. He realizes the robot's body is much tougher, and his attacks aren't working. The robot counter-attacks with a powerful blow that the protagonist has to dodge with agility. Determined to win, he decides to keep attacking until one of his blows finally works. The team leader and the streamer watch the battle, shocked by the protagonist's skill. The team leader can't believe someone can fight an advanced robot like that. He realizes the protagonist is turning the game around completely, and there is nothing left to watch. The team leader decides to end the test because he has already collected enough data for verification. He announces the verification is over and removes the training robot from the testing room. The streamer asks what the result was, and the team leader confirms there was no external interference. The streamer celebrates the news, and the chat fills with comments about the company's official verdict. She announces to everyone that the protagonist didn't use hacks, and that his skills are real. With the test ended, the streamer thanks everyone and closes the live broadcast of the event. The team leader thanks both for participating, and the protagonist says it was nothing major. The team leader prepares to leave, but the protagonist stops him and says he has a question. The young man asks if there are bugs in the game, or if anyone has ever gotten trapped because of one. The team leader denies it and says if there were such a big bug, the game wouldn't be a global success. The protagonist understands, and the team leader says goodbye and leaves, leaving them alone. The streamer thanks the protagonist for the help and says she will settle the stream revenue with him. He says it's not necessary, but she insists, and the young man agrees to talk about it later. The streamer regrets letting him go, but decides not to insist. He returns to her stream. She says goodbye and leaves, leaving the protagonist alone in the empty training room. The young man feels a bit disappointed because the verification was less productive than he hoped. Suddenly, he receives a message from his friend Nai, Yawn, asking to meet him in the training room. The friend asks how his debut as a streamer was, and he replies without much enthusiasm. He says it's not his thing, and he doesn't like having to pay attention to the chat while playing. The friend then suggests he plays alone, without worrying about the chat, to see if he likes it more. She insists he tries and says she will configure everything so he can play peacefully. The friend then invites him to play some PvP to experience the game's true potential. PvP is one of the game's two pillars along with PvE, consisting of battles between players. He asks if that's why she called him to the battle prep room, and she confirms. The protagonist says it's not his thing and thought about stopping for now, but the friend insists. He thinks story mode is too similar to the other world, but PvP might be different. He decides to give it a chance, and the friend gets excited to explain how battle mode works. The first mode is duel, where players fight in solo, duo, or best of 3 matches. The second mode has 4 variations: domination, brawl, escort, and conquest in teams of 5. But the mode they will play today is survival, a battle royale with 100 players. In this mode, 100 players drop into different zones, collect gear, and fight until one remains. The friend suggests starting with a squad match and offers to recommend a good build for him. He refuses the help and says he already knows a good build, the same one that made him a superhuman. The protagonist confirms his choice, and the friend prepares to start the survival match. The military base is one of the battlegrounds of survival mode and is a classic starting point. The friend asks if she can record the match for YouTube, and the protagonist agrees without minding. She gets excited with the permission and starts the match with the starting point set at the military base. With a smile, she wishes him luck and says to meet alive at the end of the match. Elsewhere, 2 players explore the military base searching for equipment for battle. They complain about the lack of good items and decide to search elsewhere to gear up better. Suddenly, the protagonist emerges from the shadows and attacks the 2 players with impressive speed. At another point on the map, the friend watches the kill feed and is surprised by what she sees. She doesn't understand what the protagonist is doing and wonders how he is eliminating so many players. In a quick and brutal confrontation, the protagonist eliminates another player with a single blow. He looks around and realizes there are no more players nearby to face at that moment. The young man remembers the confrontation with 4 players and how he defeated them with ease. He remembers how every blow was precise and deadly, giving his opponents no chance. With the area clear, he He prepares to continue his hunt and find new enemies to fight. Suddenly, he receives a voice message from his friend Nai, Yaon desperately asking for help. He opens the map and sees she is a block away, a considerable distance from where he is. He asks which floor she is on, and she replies she is on the terrace of the 3rd floor. The protagonist confirms and runs toward her to help her escape the enemies. He jumps from one building to another, and 2 players are surprised by his speed and agility. They prepare to face him, but the protagonist attacks them before they can react. One of the players tries to use a fire ability, but the protagonist intercepts him with speed. He grabs the player's hand and absorbs the fire ability with one of his own. The player is shocked, and the protagonist eliminates him with a quick and precise blow without hesitation. The remaining player uses an agility ability and prepares to attack the protagonist. He attacks with a series of purple spikes, emerging from the ground with impressive speed. The protagonist jumps to dodge the attack and prepares to counter attack in the air with his knife. The player is shocked by the protagonist's speed and agility and calls him crazy. The young man attacks him with a powerful kick that throws him far away, ending the battle quickly. The elimination notification appears, and the protagonist continues his journey in search of his friend. He eliminates another player on the way and runs toward the building where she is. With his speed, he eliminates 2 more players on his path without wasting time. He reaches the building and tells his friend he's outside and is coming in to help her. He asks her to wait and prepares to open the building door with care and attention. The protagonist opens the door slowly and prepares for what he might find on the other side. He senses the presence of 4 or 5 players inside the building waiting for him. Upon opening the door, he faces a player ready to attack him with a knife in hand. The player attacks him with an evil smile, but the protagonist is ready to defend himself. The young man grabs the player's arm easily and stops the attack with a quick movement. The player is shocked by the protagonist's strength and speed and can't react in time. With a punch to the stomach, the protagonist eliminates him with a single blow without any difficulty. He says it's time to pick up the pace and prepares to face the other players. He eliminates another player, and the kill feed continues to fill with his victories. The protagonist eliminates 4 more players in quick succession, showing his superiority in combat. The friend watches shocked as the protagonist eliminates every player in the match alone. Suddenly, he appears beside her, and the friend gets startled by his sudden and silent presence. She says she didn't even see him arrive, and now understands how he got 14 kills alone. The protagonist asks if she already cleared the building, and she replies she found a chainsaw. The friend gets excited and says she will lead them to victory in that round with her new weapon. The match ends with the duo's victory, and the result shows the protagonist's impressive score. They play a few more matches and win 10 times in a row with the protagonist carrying the team. The friend can't believe the winning streak, and the protagonist says that's enough for today. She thinks about how her normal college friend is actually a human weapon and wants him on her stream. The friend asks him to wait 2 days and promises to bring a real streaming offer for him. She insists he hears the proposal and says goodbye, excited about the possibility of having him on her channel. The protagonist is left alone and reflects on his experience in PvP mode without finding any clues. He feels frustrated because he hoped to find some information about the other world in the game. In her room, the streamer hums happily while browsing the game community on her phone. She sees several threads about the verification and the protagonist's incredible performance in the game. The streamer laughs excitedly at the repercussions and attention her broadcast received from the community. She sees her stream reached over 100,000 viewers and wonders if it will happen again. The girl thinks about how great it would be, continues streaming with the protagonist, and regrets not insisting. The protagonist refuses the offer politely, but the streamer remembers his direct answer. He says he isn't interested in streaming and doesn't want to participate in her broadcasts. The friend decides to sort out his payment and wonders how much he earned from the broadcast. Seeing the amount, she is shocked and wonders what is happening with her bank account. The next day, the protagonist meets her at a cafeteria without knowing the reason for the invitation. The friend shows a presentation on her laptop about a streamer project for him. She says she spent the whole night preparing the presentation to convince him to accept the proposal. The friend reminds him that he said he would be fine playing alone without worrying about the chat. She suggests a reality show format where he plays, and she handles all interactions. The format consists of cast members watching each other's recordings in a studio. She offers to handle everything and even hire a professional commentator if necessary. The friend offers a 60-40 profit split, but he still doesn't seem interested. She asks if he already received the payment from the streamer, and he remembers an email he received. He opens the email and sees that streamer Kang So Yeol sent his first payment for participation. The email informs he received 6 million won and asks for his bank details for the deposit. The friend is shocked by the amount, and the protagonist notices a strange message in the email. The messages are from an anonymous viewer who seems to know about his return from the other world. He realizes the anonymous viewer's name is a reference to his test subject number in the lab. The protagonist stands up shocked and wonders who discovered he returned from that place. He asks if she can find out who the supporter was, but she says it's almost impossible. The friend explains privacy laws and platform rules prevent tracking. After discovering the truth, the protagonist decides to accept the proposal and continue streaming. The friend celebrates the protagonist's decision and says there is no turning back now. An ad informs about the protagonist's solo broadcast with the participation of 2 guests. On a Friday night in prime time, the city is bustling and full of expectations. Players gather in front of their computers, anxious for the protagonist's broadcast. The game community is buzzing with comments and questions about the upcoming stream. 5 minutes before the start, the friend and commentator Cha-sung Chol are nervous in the studio. The friend says she is nervous, and the commentator reassures her, saying everything was prepared with care. Commentator Cha-sung Chol introduces himself as a game professional and admits he was also nervous. He says he didn't expect anyone, besides the streamer, to join the protagonist's broadcast. The friend says, as soon as she mentioned she was friends with the protagonist, he accepted instantly. With everything ready, they prepare to start the live broadcast and show the truth to everyone. The friend and commentator introduce themselves to the audience and welcome everyone to the special broadcast. The friend explains the protagonist is not in the studio and asks them not to be disappointed. She reveals the protagonist is already inside the game, and the camera shows his imposing presence. The broadcast content will be in a reality show format with live commentary and reactions. The friend says everyone is curious to see how the protagonist plays, and now they will have the chance. The protagonist receives a message from her and prepares to start the game's main mission. He receives a message from the Dimensional Management Department to rescue survivors. The main mission is to join the department and meet the rescue team outside the forest. The protagonist runs through the forest and remembers how it all started that same way. He remembers that in the other world, he was desperately trying to escape his enemies. But this time he is determined to face all his enemies and not run from battle. The protagonist advances toward the guards, ready to face them with all his strength. The guards notice him and prepare for combat, with their weapons drawn and ready to attack. The young man says they will all pay for what they did and prepares for the coming battle. The guards surround him from all sides with their swords and firearms pointed at him. With a cold look, he prepares to face the horde of enemies surrounding him from all sides. The shadowy creatures surround him and scream for him to eliminate all his enemies without mercy. The guards open fire, but the protagonist dodges the bullets with superhuman agility. He uses his chains to defend himself and attack the guards with impressive skill. One of the guards shoots a shotgun, but the protagonist dodges and disarms him with a quick movement. The weapon fires into the ground, and the explosion throws the guard away, leaving him vulnerable to attack. The guards surround him and call him a fool for facing them alone. But the protagonist isn't intimidated. He uses his chains to attack the guards from afar with incredible precision and speed. With a quick movement, he snares 2 guards, weapons with his chains, and disarms them. He pulls them close and slams them against each other with impressive and brutal force. The protagonist throws them to the ground with force, and the guards scream in pain from the impact. The guards are eliminated, and the protagonist continues his battle against the remaining enemies. With a final blow, He eliminates the last guard and looks around with a cold and determined gaze. The other guards see him and shout not to let him escape, but he has no intention of running. The commentator is shocked and wonders what he just saw on the live broadcast. He says he has never seen gameplay like that in all his years commenting on the game. The commentator criticizes the protagonist's lack of strategy, and viewers defend him in the chat. A viewer makes a donation in comments on how the protagonist's skill seems broken. The friend asks the commentator what he thinks of the opinion that the skill is overpowered. The commentator explains most skills have cooldowns, but the protagonist's doesn't. He says the protagonist's skill only amplifies his physical abilities without improving them. The commentator concludes the protagonist could fight like that in real life with his skills. The protagonist's eyes glow golden, and he prepares to face more enemies. He is surrounded by soldiers from the Dimensional Management Department, ordering his surrender. Team leader Kim Chul introduces himself and asks him to drop his weapons and surrender peacefully. The department is a government agency that eliminates invading entities from dimensional portals. They arrest and eliminate dangerous invaders inside the reverse world where dimensions mix. The protagonist recognizes the team leader and calls him by name, leaving the man surprised. The team leader realizes the protagonist is a victim from the lab and apologizes for the mistake. The young man explains an agent inside the facility gave him the radio before being defeated. The team leader mourns the agent's loss, and the protagonist remembers his kindness in the other world. The team leader asks him to stay with them until his identity is confirmed, and the young man agrees. The main mission is completed, and the protagonist levels up, gaining a skill point. He is taken to the department's consultation room and is surprised to have ended up there. He remembers that in the other world, he accepted corporate contracts to fund his revenge. Most contracts involve subjugation missions in the reverse world against dangerous creatures. The corporations used him to collect loot and discarded him when he was no longer useful. He cooperated with the department on missions, but also pointed guns at them when necessary. A woman enters the room and introduces herself as Liu Jin, an agent of the Dimensional Department. The protagonist greets her, and she congratulates him on making it this far with his skills. The agent says he has two choices to make at that crucial moment of his journey. The first is to live as a civilian under department protection, but with ability usage prohibited. The second is to become a department agent and use his skills to protect the world. She explains he will receive training and be deployed as soon as he is considered ready for action. He remembers eliminating department agents in the other world and feels uncomfortable with the idea. The agent asks which path he will choose, and the protagonist ponders his options. He thinks if he chooses to be a civilian, he'll end up accepting corporate contracts like before, and doesn't want that. The protagonist decides to become a department agent, and the agent celebrates his choice. She says they are short on agents, and he will be a great help to the team. The agent explains many people regret signing with corporations due to lack of experience. The department has a lot of knowledge in training awakened ones and conquering the reverse world. She admits pay is better with corporations, but the risk is also higher. He remembers how some companies didn't even pay if you survived, and how he was scammed. After being labeled an unregistered awakened, he was chased by the department for a while. The agent adds him to the awakened registry and hands him a work phone. He asks what the first step is, and she explains he will start as an apprentice. She says she hopes he joins her team, and the protagonist thinks about his debts from the other world. He remembers how Agent Yu Jin led the attack on the lab and saved his team. The protagonist's friend watches the scene and wonders why the conversation seems so natural. She and the commentator are shocked by the advanced artificial intelligence of the game's NPCs. They remember how NPCs in other games barely spoke and were very limited. The friend asks if she can change her choice midway, but the NPC repeats the same phrase. The commentator realizes it is fully adaptive AI, a revolutionary technology. This technology allows NPCs to respond to any situation and communicate freely. The commentator explains the technology consumes many resources and was thus considered impossible. He believes it is necessary to fulfill special conditions to activate this technology in the game. He bets the condition to activate the AI is starting the game without any assistance. The friend gets excited and wonders if the forums will explode with this discovery. The commentator says those who care about game lore will be very interested in the situation. The friend ends the story part of the broadcast and announces they will switch to PvP content. The protagonist enters the battle prep room and notices the anonymous viewer hasn't appeared yet. He asks his friend to notify him if anyone comments or donates as viewer 62. The friend receives a message from the protagonist saying he is ready to start PvP. She announces that today's content will be a new challenge for the protagonist in PvP mode. The friend announces that today's content will be duel mode, and the protagonist prepares for battle. She explains it's his first time in duel mode, and he will start in the entry league. The game has 8 ranks total, and to reach bronze, one must win 10 games in the entry league. The commentator says pros average 30 minutes, and regular players 2 hours. A mission appears challenging the protagonist to reach bronze rank in just 30 minutes. The friend sends a message challenging him to win his first 10 games in 30 minutes. The commentator says the situation is getting intense, and everyone is anxious to see the result. The first match is found, and the battle begins in a residential district of the city. The commentator is surprised to see the protagonist using a completely new weapon. He appears with 2 short swords instead of his usual chain scythe and stares at his opponent. The opponent believes it will be an easy win if he can get close to the protagonist. The countdown begins, and viewers wonder if the opponent underestimated the protagonist. The first round starts, and the opponent launches an ice blast toward the protagonist. The player is shocked to see his attack had no effect on the protagonist. The protagonist moves with incredible speed and attacks the opponent up close with his swords. He defeats him with a series of quick and precise blows, winning the first round easily. The opponent surrenders, and the protagonist wins the match without any difficulty. In the second game, he faces an opponent using a shadow spear to attack from afar. The protagonist dodges the attack easily and attacks with his own abilities. The opponent is shocked to see his shadow spear destroyed by protagonist's attack. He wins the second match easily, and his win history continues to grow rapidly. In the third game, he faces an opponent using martial arts to fight up close. The opponent attacks furiously, but the protagonist defeats him with a single precise and deadly blow. The fourth game starts, and the protagonist continues to dominate his opponents without any difficulty. He wins 10 games in just 20 minutes, breaking the professional player's record. With his victories, he climbs to bronze rank and prepares for the next challenges of the game. The friend and commentator are shocked by the speed at which he completed the challenge. The commentator says the speed is impressive, but his match logs are even more so. He explains player performance varies, but the protagonist's is always impeccable. No matter the opponent, the protagonist always plays flawlessly and dominates the match. The commentator says he is anxious to see him in ranked games, but is also worried. The friend asks why, and he explains that being a live stream, he might be a target for snipers. The commentator hopes that doesn't happen, but the protagonist's first ranked match begins. He is paired with a player who was waiting for him and calls him an arrogant cheater. The protagonist draws his sword and prepares for battle without caring about the taunts. The friend says she advised him to ignore the taunts and focus only on the coming battle. The first round begins, and the opponent transforms into a lightning creature with a war cry. He attacks the protagonist with a blast of electrical energy illuminating the whole scene. The protagonist dodges the attack easily and prepares to attack with his sword. The battle between the two players begins with an exchange of quick and powerful blows. The opponent attacks furiously, but the protagonist dodges all his blows with ease. The protagonist thinks the opponent was too confident and that he was just observing him. With a single swing of his sword, the protagonist defeats the opponent and wins the first round. The opponent is shocked and calls him a monster for defeating him so easily. The second round begins, and the opponent prepares to use a new strategy to win. He knows he will lose if he continues like this, and decides to use one of his strongest abilities. The second round begins, and the opponent wraps himself in an aura of red and yellow lightning. The protagonist senses something is different, and the opponent's aura is stronger and sharper. The opponent attacks with impressive speed and strength, that destroy the surrounding scenery. The young man notices the opponent's movements are more efficient, like an eternal robots. The opponent laughs and says he was holding back in the first round and will now fight seriously. The protagonist ignores the taunts and prepares for the most intense battle to come. He remembers his friend's words to crush anyone who called him a cheater. The protagonist prepares for battle with a determined look, focused on his opponent. His eyes glow golden, and he prepares to show his true strength and skill. The opponent notices the change in the protagonist's aura and wonders what is happening. He feels he has the advantage, but can't hide his nervousness at the sudden change. The opponent calls him a cheater and attacks with all his strength in a last-ditch effort to win. The protagonist dodges the attack easily and attacks with a blow from his sword. He defeats him with a single movement, and the opponent is thrown far away, defeated. The protagonist continues to dominate the battle, and viewers comment on the opponent's humiliation. He thinks the opponent was too confident, and he was just wasting his time with him. With a final blow, the protagonist wins the first round, and the opponent is shocked by the defeat. The second round begins, and the opponent prepares to use a new strategy to win the battle. He knows he will lose if he continues like this, and decides to use one of his strongest abilities. The second round begins, and the opponent wraps himself in an aura of red and yellow lightning. The protagonist senses something is different, and the opponent's aura is stronger and sharper. He realizes the opponent is deliberately not finishing him, and just toying with him. The commentator says the protagonist is following his friend's advice to the letter. The opponent wonders what the protagonist is, and the young man stares at him with a cold, distant look. The protagonist defeats him with a single blow, and the opponent turns into a stone tombstone. After this victory, he continues to win match after match in an unstoppable and dominant fashion. He reaches 30 wins in a row and climbs to gold rank, leaving everyone shocked. Viewers ask him to share his build, and the friend is unsure if she should ask. She asks if he minds revealing his build, and the protagonist agrees without hesitation. The friend announces the build reveal, and viewers get excited about the news. The friend and commentator end the broadcast, and thank everyone for watching for so long. The commentator praises the protagonist's performance, and the friend excitedly agrees with the result. She wonders if he will break the record for consecutive wins, and the commentator responds. He says the current record is 76 consecutive wins by the player battler. The friend says she is sure the protagonist will break the record easily. The commentator says battler is famous for being super competitive and might already be eyeing him. The game community is buzzing with the broadcast repercussions and the build reveal. In a thread about the sniper who faced him, the player was permanently banned for using hacks. Viewers comment that the protagonist beats even cheaters and wonder if battler could do it. Professional player battler appears with a challenging smile and seems interested in the protagonist. A few days later, the second broadcast begins, and the protagonist is in a lush forest. He thinks the anonymous viewer didn't show up last stream and wonders if something is missing. Agent Ute Jin greets him, and viewers comment on her beauty and popularity in the game. She asks if he is nervous about his first field mission, and he replies he is fine. As soon as he entered the game, a new mission appears him to join the agent at a designated location. The mission is to completely clear hostile entities inside the reverse world and seal the space. They arrive at an abandoned location, and the protagonist realizes it's another corporate discard. The agent explains corporations abandon locations when they find nothing of value. The protagonist thinks corporations act the same way in both worlds without caring. The mission involves dealing with bug-type enemies that are weak but numerous and annoying. A soldier greets them and asks if they are the awakened ones from the dimensional department. The agent confirms, and the soldier allows them to enter the site to begin the cleanup mission. They enter an abandoned factory, and the agent is impressed by the view of the portal. The protagonist looks at the portal and realizes the place looks familiar for some reason. He remembers seeing that place in the other world, but on a much larger scale. The agent asks if something is wrong, and a man approaches with a mocking smile. He calls himself Choi Hyong Chol, an awakened affiliated with a corporation, and taunts her. The protagonist wonders why he is there, and the man says he didn't expect to meet her. The agent accuses him of plotting something, and he pretends to be offended by the accusation. The man turns to the protagonist and invites him to join a corporation instead of the department. The agent reprimands him and asks him not to cross the line with his taunts and invitations. The man backs off and says he'll let her handle the reverse world, saying goodbye mockingly. The protagonist asks who that man was, and the agent explains he was her first apprentice. She says after he was recruited by a corporation, he started spreading malicious rumors. The commentator and the friend are surprised by the revelation and comment on their relationship. The commentator says the adaptive AI is unlocking more story content in the game. The agent decides to drop the conversation and invites the protagonist to enter the portal. Outside, other men watch the scene and prepare to take action shortly after. With an evil smile, one of them says it's time to work and prepares for what's to come. 20 minutes later inside the reverse world, the landscape is desolate and gloomy. The protagonist wipes blood from his face and looks around with a cold, determined gaze. The agent is lying on the ground wounded, and the protagonist prepares to face more enemies. He remembers how it all happened that same way in the other world and prepares to fight. The battle continues, and the protagonist fights with impressive ferocity to protect the agent. On the ground, a red bullet lies amidst a pool of blood indicating a battle. The scene rewinds a bit in time and shows the protagonist and agent entering the dimensional portal. The agent explains that is the portal to the reverse world, and they need to cross it. The protagonist thinks it is the same as in the other world and prepares to enter the portal. They cross the portal and are transported to the reverse world, a dark and dangerous place. The young man notices something is wrong and feels a strange presence in the air around him. Suddenly, the portal closes, and the agent screams for him to watch out for what's coming. The agent pushes him away, and the portal explodes, separating the two in the process. The protagonist finds himself alone in a forest and wonders if he was separated from the agent. He thinks the tunnels might collapse from external impacts and prepares for the worst. Suddenly, he is surrounded by giant spiders and prepares to fight the creatures. With his knife in hand, he decides to clear the area and then look for Agent Yu Jin. Elsewhere, a man uses a lightning ability to attack a horde of creatures. He fights ferociously, but the creatures keep attacking non-stop from all sides. Agent Yu Jin fights the creatures and realizes they don't stop coming no matter how many she defeats. She realizes the forest is much larger than it should be for a small-scale world. The agent senses something is definitely wrong and prepares for what's coming. She hopes the protagonist is safe and worries about his safety amidst the chaos. Suddenly, the man who provoked them earlier appears and attacks the agent with a fire ability. The agent is caught by surprise and is hit by his attack. The agent dodges the man's attack and prepares to counter-attack with her own abilities. She recognizes Choi Hyung, Chol, and asks why he is there at that moment of her mission. He says he is on a secret mission and is just following orders from his superiors. The agent realizes her wound is deep and she needs to get out of there as fast as possible. She concentrates and prepares to use her abilities to escape and survive the attack. The agent summons a guardian stone to protect herself from the man's fire attack. The stone blocks the attack, but is destroyed by the force of the explosion, throwing the guard back. The agent uses the distraction to finish the guard with a precise and powerful kick. Choi Hyung, Chol gets annoyed by his subordinate's defeat and advances toward the agent. She prepares for battle and concentrates her energy to use one of her abilities. The agent attacks the guards with an energy beam that throws them far away with force. She uses the attack to create an opening and escape the battle while they are distracted. The men shout not to let her escape and chase her through the forest with their weapons drawn. They lose sight of her, and one of them blames the other for letting her escape so easily. The agent hides in a tunnel and thinks she would be in trouble if not for that hiding spot. She wonders what secret mission the corporations are plotting in that place. Elsewhere, the protagonist eliminates various creatures with impressive ease and precision. He senses Agent Yu Jin's presence and realizes she is nearby somewhere. The young man finds footprints on the ground and confirms the agent was there a short while ago. With this, he follows the footprints and prepares for what he might find next. The protagonist realizes something happened and prepares for what's to come in the forest. He hears Agent Yu Jin's voice in the distance and runs toward her to help in the battle. A blue beam of light cuts the sky, and the protagonist follows the signal to find the agent. He finds the agent being attacked by a giant centipede, and viewers comment on the danger. The protagonist moves with incredible speed and attacks the centipede with his knife to save the agent. He cuts the creature into pieces with a single blow and eliminates it with impressive precision. The protagonist saves the agent from the centipede's attack and holds her carefully in his arms. He asks if she is okay, and the agent recognizes him even though she is wounded and weak. The young man realizes her wound is deep and wasn't caused by insects like those. He concludes the wound was caused by an ability, and that only an awakened one could have done it. The protagonist asks if it was Choi Hyeon, Chol, who attacked her, and she confirms with difficulty. He realizes the man followed them right after the portal anomaly and prepares for the confrontation. In the studio, the friend and commentator discuss Choi Hyeon, Chol's ambush. The friend wonders if the adaptive AI is influencing the events of the game's story. The commentator says it's just a guess, and they need to keep watching to find out. The agent says she barely got away from them, and they could attack at any moment. She asks the protagonist to escape first, but he refuses to leave her behind. The agent insists, saying Choi Hyeon, Chol is a veteran and he can't face him alone. The protagonist reassures her and says he has a plan to defeat the enemy and escape there. Elsewhere, Choi Hyeon, Chol's men search for the agent and wonder where she hid. Choi Hyeon, Chol says with her wounds she couldn't have gone far and decides to search for her. He goes down the valley and is surprised by the protagonist attacking him with a fire aura. Choi Hyeon, Chol is startled by the young man's presence, and the protagonist pretends to be lost and confused. The man recognizes him as the agent's rookie and is surprised he is alive and well. The protagonist pretends not to know anything and asks what happened to Agent Yu Jin. Choi Hyeon Chol reassures him, saying she is fine and he will see her soon. With an evil smile, he tells the boy to take a nap and he will find the agent. The protagonist dodges the attack and attacks with a quick, precise blow to his neck. Choi Hyeon Chol is caught by surprise, and the young man immobilizes him with a fatal arm lock. The man calls him an idiot, but the protagonist finishes him with a quick and silent blow. His subordinates are shocked by the scene and wonder what happened to their leader. One of the men worries about Choi Hyeon Chol and runs to help him, but it is too late. The other man chases the protagonist through the forest, determined to avenge his fallen leader. The young man hides in the shadows, and the man wonders where he went in the middle of the forest. The man searches for him carefully, but the protagonist surprises him from behind with a quick attack. The man is startled by the sudden presence, and the protagonist attacks without giving a chance to react. With a blow to the neck, the protagonist knocks him out and leaves him unconscious on the ground. The other man finds Choi Hyeon Chol wounded and tries to stop the bleeding to save him. Suddenly, the protagonist appears and attacks the man with a fatal blow to his chest. The man calls him crazy, and the protagonist stares at him with a cold look. The protagonist stares at the man with a cold and determined look, ready for battle. The man asks where his companion is, and the protagonist remains silent and stares at him. The man remembers the protagonist and recognizes him as the one who attacked him earlier. He attacks the protagonist with a series of rock spikes emerging from the ground with force. The young man dodges the attack easily and prepares to attack with his sword. The man doesn't give up and launches a wave of earth toward the protagonist with all his strength. The protagonist cuts the earth wave in half with his sword and advances toward the man. He uses the tree for support to jump and attack the man from above with a powerful blow. The man is shocked by the protagonist's strength and skill and calls him a monster. The protagonist hides behind a tree and prepares for the man's next attack. He uses the tree as a shield and attacks the man with a sword blow with full force. The protagonist pierces the man with his sword and stares at him with a cold, remorseless look. The man begs him not to come closer, but the protagonist attacks him without mercy. With a swing of his sword, he cuts the man in half and eliminates him with a single movement. The protagonist kneels on the ground and prepares for the next attack to come. He stands up and faces his next opponent with a determined look, focused on the battle. The protagonist prepares for battle with a cold and determined look, ready for whatever comes. He stares at his opponent with a challenging look and prepares for the final battle. The protagonist prepares for battle with a cold and determined look, ready for whatever comes. With that, he advances, and with a few strikes, he moves past him. The man is shocked by the defeat and can't believe what just happened. The protagonist breathes a sigh of relief, and viewers comment on the impressive victory. The friend and commentator are shocked by the protagonist's skill in a 3-against-1 fight. He thinks even with the ambushes, the difficulty still doesn't compare to the other world. The young man decides to check the surroundings and finds the bodies of the men who attacked him. He finds Choi Hyong, Chol's cell phone, and reads a message about the capture mission. The protagonist decides to leave the investigation to the department and focuses on the items he found. He finds a sharp dagger that returns to his hand and other items with special effects, a Victor's bracelet that increases power and decreases skill cooldown time, and a recluse's necklace that allows the use of shadow storage to keep equipment. He thinks now he can check item effects, something he couldn't do in the other world. With the new equipment, he prepares to continue his mission and find Agent Yu Jin. He needs to clear the reverse world before the agent's wounds get worse, and it's too late. Elsewhere, Agent Yu Jin faces a giant, dangerous creature in the forest. The area boss, the Emperor Scorpion, appears, and the agent prepares for battle. She laments her bad luck but thinks it's better she faces the creature than the protagonist. The scorpion attacks with its venomous tail, and the agent dodges the blow with agility. She prepares to fight the creature with her skills and determination. The agent uses her lightning ability to attack the scorpion with all her strength. The battle between the agent and the Emperor Scorpion begins with an exchange of blows. The agent prepares to face the giant creature with her skills and determination. Suddenly, the protagonist appears and defeats the creature with a single blow of his sword. The agent is shocked by the young man's appearance, and viewers comment on the scene. The reverse world begins to close, and the protagonist says they need to leave as fast as possible. He offers to carry her, and the agent is impressed he defeated the hunters alone. The protagonist carries her on his back, and the commentator explains they need to escape before getting trapped. The agent holds onto him, and he prepares to run toward the exit portal. They escape the reverse world in time, and the subjugation mission is completed successfully. The protagonist levels up and is taken to the Dimensional Department headquarters to report. Team leader Kim Chol asks if it's true the agent was wounded by a corporate awakened. The young man confirms, and the team leader gets angry at the corporation's audacity to attack them. The protagonist says he eliminated them, and the team leader is shocked by his direct answer. He remembers how he defeated all of Choi Hyong, Chol's men alone and without help. The team leader asks if there is any evidence, and the boy hands over Choi Hyong, Chol's phone. The team leader says this will facilitate the investigation and asks him to rest and leave the rest to them. The protagonist prepares to leave, but the team leader stops him and warns him. He says there will be an opportunity later, and he needs to be patient until then. The protagonist understands the message and agrees to wait for the opportunity to get revenge. The field mission is concluded, and the protagonist levels up, gaining a skill point. A system screen appears asking him to select his second main skill element. The commentator says the first field mission is finally over, and it was spectacular. The friend decides to check viewer reactions and is surprised by a private donation. Anonymous viewer 62 donates 3 million won and congratulates him on passing the first checkpoint. He announces he will give a special mission to the protagonist and that he must finish the stream first. The friend alerts the protagonist about the donation and the message from anonymous viewer 62. The protagonist reads the screenshot and wonders about the special mission the viewer mentioned. He remembers previous messages from the viewer and realizes he knows about his return. The young man thanks the friend for the info and asks her to continue the stream quickly. The commentator notices the friend's distraction and asks if something is wrong with her. She composes herself and says the broadcast is receiving a great response from the public. The commentator reminds that last time the protagonist set a win record in duel mode. The friend announces that today's PvP mode will be Brawl, with 4 different game options. Viewers complain about the choice and wonder if they are avoiding duel mode. The friend ignores the comments and prepares to start the match in Brawl mode. An escort match is found, and the protagonist joins an attack team with other players. The commentator is surprised by the mode choice and prepares to comment on the match. He explains in escort mode, the attack team needs to get the payload to the destination. The friend says she is curious to see how the protagonist will do in a 5 vs 5 team match. The protagonist prepares for battle, and his teammates get excited for the match. The battle begins, and the attack team advances toward the objective. The first round begins, and the payload starts moving toward its destination. The attack team advances with the payload, while the protagonist stays behind watching. The commentator notices the protagonist staying behind and wonders what his strategy is. The young man plans an attack from the rear to surprise the defense team and ensure victory. The commentator explains that although risky, it's a good strategy for skilled players. The protagonist runs through the streets with incredible speed, ready to execute his plan. Viewers comment on the difficulty of the play and wonder if he can do it alone. With his speed, he quickly reaches the defense team's location and prepares to attack. He jumps from a building and surprises the defense team with an unexpected aerial attack. With a determined look, he advances toward his opponents with his sword drawn. He attacks the first enemy with a quick and precise blow, eliminating him easily. The other players are shocked by the surprise attack and can't react in time. With a few more blows, he eliminates 2 more players from the defense team without difficulty. The remaining players wonder what their team is doing and prepare to fight. One of the players decides to hold the protagonist, while the others chase the payload, but the protagonist eliminates 3 more players in quick succession, leaving the team in panic. The first round ends with the attack team's victory, and the players are shocked. The friend and commentator are impressed by the speed at which the match ended. The commentator wonders if the protagonist has some urgent appointment to play so fast. The next 3 modes follow the same pattern, with the protagonist dominating all matches. In Annihilation mode, the protagonist defeats his opponents with impressive strength and speed. He eliminates all players on the opposing team alone, guaranteeing victory for his team. In Domination mode, he invades the enemy base and causes a large explosion to create a distraction. The opponents despair and try to block him, but he attacks them with superhuman agility. He jumps over the wall and attacks the enemies from above with a powerful blow of his sword. The protagonist eliminates 2 players at the same time with an aerial attack and continues his charge. With a cold and determined look, he dominates the match and leads his team to victory once again. In Conquest mode, he advances across the battlefield and captures the enemy flag with ease. He dominates all matches with overwhelming pentakills, finishing the games in an instant. The friend celebrates another donation of 3 million won from anonymous viewer 62. The protagonist reads the message and understands he needs to keep playing to unlock a new system. He decides to keep playing and do what the anonymous viewer wants for now. 3 days later, on the day of the 3rd broadcast, the protagonist is on the training field. He receives a message from Agent Yu, Jin, saying she found a replacement to supervise him. The commentator wonders who the replacement will be, and viewers speculate about the new supervisor. A bandaged hand greets the protagonist and Agent Yu. Jin appears with a smile on her face. She asks how he is, and he says he is better but still needs supervision. The agent says his replacement is arriving, and the protagonist prepares to meet them. A woman with an elegant walk approaches, and the protagonist stares at her with curiosity. The woman approaches and prepares to introduce herself as the protagonist's new supervisor. The woman introduces herself as Kim Na, and viewers comment on her appearance and popularity. The protagonist greets her and remembers her as the 2nd most skilled in the department. He remembers facing her in the other world and how dangerous she was as an enemy. Agent Yu. Jin says goodbye and reveals she snuck out to come there and introduce them. Kim Na scolds her, but the agent asks her to take care of the rookie and flees the scene. The protagonist and the new supervisor are left alone on the training field and stare at each other in silence. She asks about his weapons, and he replies he uses both long swords and daggers in combat. The woman gets curious about his answer and skill level and challenges him to a duel. She invites him for a light sparring match to test his skills and see what he is capable of. The commentator and the friend are surprised by the development and wonder what is happening. The commentator says it's common for sword users to train together, but not everyone uses swords. He concludes this development is only possible because the protagonist is the main player. The friend is shocked and gets goosebumps at the idea, and viewers comment on the adaptive AI. The protagonist realizes the game has a completely different flow from other players. He understands that depending on his actions, the story can unfold in different ways. The protagonist realizes the game resembles reality and prepares for the duel against Kim. Now, the woman prepares for battle against our protagonist.